You're listening to The Pursuit of Everything with Levi Warner. We're here to talk about success, building wealth, fitness, health, making deals, and continued struggles of achieving those things and how we're working to overcome them. Together, we'll work on conquering your own imposter syndrome, self-doubt, and most importantly, a life of true freedom, wealth, and happiness. And here's your host, Levi Warner.
All right. Well, here we are doing episode 1 of Pursuit of Everything. We've taped this 3 times now.
Hopefully the magic is still there.
Right.
I feel like it is.
You feel like the magic is there. DJ Topeka in here. We need a name for Haley. Captain IT.
Yes.
So we have recorded this a couple times. We're going to try to bring the magic out here. Go over the origins of our story and
talk about how you got into real estate and some fun stuff.
Right.
So ready to
I'm ready to kick this off. Listen a little 50 Cent before I got in here.
You're feeling inspired?
A little hustler's ambition.
You're part of the G Unit this morning?
I'm part of the G Unit every day.
Does 50 Cent know?
I'm pretty sure.
So let's go back. Take it back. Way back. Yes. To your early days in real estate.
Right.
What made you get into it?
So I just I fell into real estate. I never had like the calling. I never had I knew this is what I wanted to be when I grew up. When I lived in Las Vegas, my father-in-law at the time got me a job as a maintenance man at an apartment complex. And if you know me at all, you know I can't fix many things.
Even just yesterday, we have a kid that is talking about doing some sweat equity, and Levi, he had tools he could use. I don't have any tools.
I own a home building company. I do not own any tools. I've never built a house, but that's for another podcast. So I started in maintenance. I started learning how to, I could fix enough to get by, and kind of rose up the ranks pretty quickly because even back then, labor sucks and people aren't willing to work. So you show up every day and you show some initiative. I moved up to maintenance supervisor and then got into the management part of it, which was new for me. Vegas was an interesting place to get into that. And then moved into the office. They figured with my personality, I could get into leasing. So I got into the management and then I started managing, an 800 unit complex. So that's kind of how it started. I envy the people that know what they want to be, right? That they know what they want to be. Like my wife is a nurse practitioner and she grew up knowing that she wanted to be a nurse, right? Her teachers know that they want to be teachers and shit like that. That's not me, right? I just grew up knowing I didn't want to be poor anymore. So then I moved back to Billings and I got a job at another property manager in maintenance and then just worked up into management again there. And then I got the coveted government job that everybody thinks they want. So I'm 24, 25 years old thinking that I landed a sweet gig with the housing authority because everybody wants a government job. You get, Veterans Day off and President's Day off and all of that stuff. And absolutely was miserable in my life. Because the more work you do, the less people like you. And it's just not a place where someone who wants to grow and prosper goes to work. So while I was working there, I was studying and got my real estate license.
At work,
babe. Well, because they told me I was doing too much work. I was also recovering from playing rugby at the time as well. So there was a lot of hangovers
and good snacks there all the time.
They did have good snacks. They put some LBs on. Thank God I was playing rugby. And a lot of cookies. The cookie game was on point.
Homemade or
Yeah, I remember there was that lady Sandy there that worked there. She was great. And she always liked to feed me.
That the people wanting to feed you thing comes from growing up as a poor kid and needing to go get dinner at other people's houses.
Right. That's the first form of sales is getting fed when you're poor.
100%.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So then I got into real estate.
So you got your real estate license, right? What were hurdles that you faced? Because you were kind of a punk
shitbag?
You were kind of like a punk kid back then.
Right. Well, not really back then, right? At 25, 26, in the teens and early 20s. I was playing rugby. I was drinking all the time.
Okay, let me remind you that I knew you at that age, obviously.
So did
DJ was an upstanding, nice gentleman.
Him and B were just very great.
A lot of hurdle. The biggest hurdle was being young, right? Not having any experience, having to, kind of fake my way through that. which wasn't hard because, if you're just honest with people and you tell them, I'm new, I've got time to work with you, you're my most important client because you're my only client.
If I don't know the answer to a question, I'll find out,
Right.
which I feel like a lot of people struggle with, being
Right.
like, hey, I don't know, but I'll find out.
I still do it
Oh,
all the time.
Yeah.
Because I'm not real smart. So when you're young, they don't expect you to know everything. So just having the resources to find it and being upfront and telling people that is the way to be there. So that was a huge hurdle, just getting over that young factor. And then, coming from kind of a shitty background, having the reputation as, the punk kid in town and that kind of stuff, that was a tough hurdle. There was some drama with that and all that kind of fun stuff. So you just have to overcome and adapt, right?
It's really funny as you get older. We went to lunch yesterday, and the guy that owns the restaurant is like, "Hey, how you doing?" Levi's like, "Oh, I'm good. How are you?" And then I'm like, "How do you know that guy? We used to fight each other in high school."
Right.
I'm like,
and I won, so it's a competition part. So, and then not having any clients, right? Like that's what everybody struggles with getting into any business is you have to have clients. And now, in my mid 40s and being in real estate for over 20 years, watching people get into real estate, mortgage, all of that, and they want to overthink and they want to create systems and CRMs and all this other bullshit when they need to just go out to a coffee shop and find a fucking client.
right.
Right? Like if you don't have a client to work with, you don't need a CRM to put them into. So we've talked, I'm in a bunch of entrepreneur groups and stuff like that. And then new people come in every year and they're like, oh, what CRM are you using? Thinking like there's going to be some magic answer to how you keep in contact with your clients.
Or even when people first get started, they think you have to dump a bunch of money into marketing and blah, blah, blah. But like, if you don't have money to dump into it,
right.
You get creative.
Right.
I did.
And
You did.
Yeah, being creative is the fun part, right? And we go through these phases where I'm buying land and, investments, and then you become cash poor, and then you have to be creative again, right? So that's looking back, it's always kind of romantic, right? Like when I had to do open houses, but you'd find the open houses where the agent was paying for the ad and stuff like that, right? So like finding that, it's very romantic to look back, but that's kind of how you have to grind it out.
But in the midst of doing it, you're not like,
oh, this is great.
no. But I also feel like I wasn't like, this is fucking awful. I had when I got my first listing, I didn't have any signs because I couldn't pay for them. So I had to like borrow a sign and we put tape over it and wrote my name and phone number.
It works.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, just to overcome that, you just had to show up every day, and people have a hard time doing that. So you show up and you dress up, show up, make calls, take calls, right? Like
kind of talking about the struggle when you're first starting.
Yeah.
Can you think of, like, you have to have a good story of one of your initial struggles and what you did to overcome it?
Well, mine's a little different than like yours because I had 2 kids at that time, right? Like, so I didn't.
Hey, I had a dog.
When you started real estate, you did not have a dog.
Yeah, I did.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Okay. Anywho, I had a wife and 2 kids, and so I had this nut to crack, right? Like I had to produce. I didn't have a choice, and I kind of find that I do better in those situations when I have to do that. But I was also throwing boxes at UPS in the morning. I was painting with painters on rentals at night to pay the bills until commissions started rolling in. And in real estate, the people you meet today you might not sell them something for 6-8 months if you have a great CRM. But that is my story, right? Like working 3 jobs to pay the bills, still being kind of a shitbag because I'm 25. We're out, just trying to figure life out at that point, and just trying to make it work. I did luck out though. Like I had a sale within the first week that I got licensed. I did open houses every weekend, no matter what. Just like constantly grinding. So at that time, right, you could show up to the office. This is brick and mortar times because I started way back in the day, where people would call the office. And so I was there every day. Every Monday at 8 was the best time because people would call off the newspaper ads on the weekend. So my struggle was real, like paying for kids, paying, for all your bills and everything.
Do you think it's helpful, like in today's day and age, for real estate agents to be in the office?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I do. Because I am obviously way younger. When I first started, Levi said, you need to be in the office every day. There's, people walking in, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay. I went to the office every day. It was a different time. There was the internet, right? So there wouldn't walk in. People didn't call the office, right? There wasn't like floor time like there was in the Stone Ages. So, but what I did get out of being in the office every day is I was around producing agents.
Mhm.
So I learned by listening to them on the phone, hearing how they handled different problems, that kind of thing. Also seeing me in there every day when it came time for like open houses where they're paying for the ads. They came to me first because I was in the office every day. They knew me from being there all the time.
And you don't find clients sitting at home.
Right.
You know, even then, you don't find them sitting in the office, right? Like you have to go find them. You have to go meet and talk to people all the time.
I even had one of my first kind of tough deals where I really learned something was just because I was in the office all the time, and the agent who had the listing also had the buyer, which is like a dual agent, but it was kind of sticky. So she didn't want the buyer. So she gave that buyer to me. And it was a tough deal, but I learned a lot from it and I got a paycheck. So, and that was from being in the office every day. Speaking of being in the office every day, you're being around people and hearing them on the phone and blah, blah, blah. Talk about some of your mentors because there were some characters in there. So I want to take it back to Vegas.
So Vegas, old Dave was my first maintenance supervisor. He was a former biker gang leader, but it was interesting. I heard a lot of good stories.
So Dave was like in his 40s?
Yeah, had to be in his
and
40s.
you were 20?
Yeah, early 20s. Yeah. So Dave rode up to work in his motorcycle every day, and I'm like 90s gangster rap.
Sort of death row, obviously,
Yeah.
before he moved on to G in it.
Right. I got.
He switched labels.
Yeah, Dave was a character, great guy, knew how to fix a lot of things. I did not know. He taught me a lot about fixing things. Dave got fired.
Did you learn anything from Dave about how to talk to people?
How not to talk to people.
Okay.
Dave was very aggressive and was a nice guy, nice to the people that he liked, but he was very aggressive. Didn't take upper management well. So you find that a lot in the blue collar world. Our dad is a truck driver, right? He hates the man.
He hates the man. He actually just told me yesterday his old boss from Sydney passed away. I'm like, oh, that's too bad. Yeah, he's a fucking asshole anyway. I'm like, okay.
Yeah, Dave was a character. But he was a great guy. And then we had Jim and Dick from the first management company here. Jim taught me a ton about dealing with people. Just because I'm a big guy, so get down on people's eye levels. Don't try to, even if you're standing there, you're intimidating them. Just try to make them comfortable. Hearing him talk to people every day was really helpful to me.
It was gold.
Yeah.
He would take, property management, you have pissed off tenants coming in. He could have them laughing by the time they walked out.
Yeah. He also liked to kick people out of Christmas. So
He did love, he'd be like, woo, eviction season.
So, yeah. And Dick taught me a lot about business. Dick was an accountant, so I learned a lot about...
So they were business partners.
They were.
Dick and Jim were, and they could not have been more different.
They were complete opposites, which was great because I learned a ton about business from Dick, being in maintenance and learning, if you're taking on a remodel job, you have to profit every day. Every day you figure out your costs and your labor costs and your material costs, and then, the profit and figure out, if you're making any money or not. So that was huge. Because you can't learn that stuff unless you're operating in real life. So that was huge too. So
Sandy with the good cookies.
Sandy with the good
Did you learn
cookies at the
anything?
Housing Authority. That was really about it there.
Organic cookies.
You work for the city. That's
Right. Right. I did put on some LBs there. Mark at Mark, my first broker, I still use phrases that I heard him tell people to this day. Great talking to people. He was great with the written word. He really was able to, type good letters and stuff like that. So, you put yourself in those situations, you find mentors and people that you take nuggets from. They're not all perfect people, but some things worked out really well for them. And you just got to take the good and the bad and find out what's great for that.
And I still, and I think you do it too, do you still listen to how people talk?
I listen to everybody, how everybody talks to everybody, right? Like you learn a lot from the body language, the eye contact. You learn a ton from those things. You engage a lot how people are going to do in business, or how they're going to do in a business transaction, and how they're interacting with you and other people.
And the other thing that's funny is obviously your education background. We didn't really touch on that, but
Right.
you're not a school guy.
I'm not a school guy. No, I didn't graduate high school. I have a GED.
Right.
And,
But
yeah.
you learned from.
I've learned from life experience, right? Like
Right.
you just getting out there and doing it. You know, I don't think you can, and I'm really good at putting myself in positions to grow and get to those positions, to find those mentors and find those education where, like, you can't learn that in the book, right? You can't put yourself in, you know, when somebody is getting evicted and it's the holidays and you have to show empathy. And, you know, we joke that Jim liked to kick people out, but he never really did.
Right.
Right. And then you work with them and they end up, you know, paying it off. And then they're very receptive to you, and learning those situations. And especially in real estate, people are buying huge investments for them. This is, you know, and it's not just a transaction. You're buying someone's buying their home for that. Their children are going to have Christmases in and birthdays in and stuff like that. So you just have to show the empathy, and you don't learn that, you know, in a human resource class. You just can't until you keep putting yourself in those situations. So I'm really good at finding ways to get in and learning from those people in those situations and getting to the right people.
Who's your mentor now?
Landy with Oakland Company would be who I would consider where I want to be in life. And he gives me good practical advice and super smart.
And same thing. I learned from listening to Landy
Right. That's right.
in like stressful situations. That dude can remain calm no matter what.
Right. Which I don't.
But right, so it's something
But
you're
we're
working
learning.
on.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what a great thing to learn.
Absolutely. But then I'm also in these personal development groups. So Andy Frisella and Ed Milet and Mark Evans are my mentors. So as you grow, you have to keep putting yourself in rooms to learn from people that are in the spots that you want to be in.
Talk to me about your first real estate deal. You're not like with a client, like your first personal real estate deal. How'd you buy your first house?
The first house I bought the first year I was in real estate. That was back in the days when they did stated income loans. So which they don't do anymore because of the 2008 crisis. My wife at the time was a teacher, but then I was commissioned and had all these little side gigs. So I was able to, we found it. Obviously, like, we wanted to stay in a budget. We didn't like anything in our budget. So we went up, but it was still a fixer-upper, right? And
that house still has the original furnace.
right. It does, yeah. And we used my commission as part of the down payment. We just came up with the rest of, saved up the rest of the down payment from the commissions that I made and the side gigs. And we bought it, and it's been a great house. So then we painted, and I put a new deck on, blew my appendix out during that. Good story. And it's a ton of work. So my kids still live there with their mom half the time. It's still a great house.
So it made me think of I was just having this conversation about you with somebody else the other day. It might have been you, about how you're always like kind of giving to like the people in your circle.
Oh yes, that was me.
But it even made me think of the apartment building that we all lived in before you bought your first house.
Yep.
Nicest people owned it. Levi managed it.
Yep. And
they were nice apartments, and they weren't super expensive to where you got everybody you knew into that apartment building.
Yeah.
Oh, BK hung out there a lot.
Yeah. I was at home with children.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So
there was 8 units in there, and I think we were like personally friends with people that in 6 of them.
Yes. So I met, and I was still and then I started the property management company here. We got up to 800 units managing apartments here in Billings, and then I sold that company, and that's when I started the home building company.
Talk to me about buying your first rental property.
First rental property. It was a guy that I met at the gym, and super good guy, and he was an appraiser, and he did mostly civil appraisals with right-of-ways and stuff like that. And he had wanted me to get into appraising, which I met with him a few times. really wasn't my gig because
Which is funny because now like appraisers don't want to train anybody.
right. He's a super good guy. And then he owned this apartment complex, and he's like, "Oh, I'm thinking about putting it on the market." I'm like, "Oh, I need to get into buying rentals." And we started talking about it, and he didn't want to take the big tax hit. That's why he hadn't sold it yet. And we came up with a plan where I'd buy it on a contract for deed, no money down, 8-plex on not the greatest part of town. There are 8 efficiency units. So I bought those and owned them for like 3 or 4 years. A lot of Section 8 people in there, which I had the background in from the Housing Authority. It was a great property. And then the lumber yard next to me ended up buying it and tearing them down. So I 1031 that into, that was a 13-plex that it was. There were 13 units there. I ended up selling that, and then I bought an 8-plex with that 1031 money, which is a tax-free.
Did you learn lessons from that?
Owning real estate is by far the best investment that I can recommend making. I've invested in the stock market. I've invested in crypto. I've invested in about anything that you can think of in real estate. By far the best investment that you can make. The rate of return is great. The depreciation on your taxes. There's tons and tons of upside to owning real estate. Managing it, I don't manage it myself anymore. We hire that out. But in learning about the deals are great. Each deal is like an organism. You find out what the seller needs, what the buyer needs, and you try to weave it together with the financing. So it's kind of like baking a cake. Not every cake is perfect. You find the ingredients that work for each party, and then you're able to make deals. Or you're not. Not every deal is gonna go great. But this worked out great for everybody. He didn't take the great big tax hit. I got into investing, and then I was able to pay it off and then move on and buy bigger and better units.
So it's also funny that you met him at the gym, because
Right.
next I wanted to talk to you about networking
Right.
and building relationships.
Right.
And if you aren't networking, you're not getting new clients.
You guys have been good. Like, you guys, going back to the beginning of the podcast, saying you don't need, certain software to,
Right.
if you don't have the people. Everything you guys have told me to do works.
Mhm.
And it's all very simple.
Well, and we didn't create it.
Right.
And it goes back to you can't find these things at home and on your couch, right? You just are not going to find them sitting there, watching TV. And you have to be out. You have to be out talking to people about what their needs and wants are. So you just have to keep putting yourself out there in uncomfortable situations, or you won't. You just can't make it happen.
When you first got into real estate, did you have did you even think ahead at that point? Were you ever like, this is where I'm going to go, this is what I'm going to do? Or were you just like day to day?
I was just trying to make it by. Right?
So how did you, fall into the building?
Right. Well, so the one goal I always wanted, where you thought that you made it, was the $100,000 a year mark. Right. That's where everybody thinks that, looking back, it's kind of silly that the goal, but it's a goal, right? So that's where I always aim to hit. And then when I hit that, then you just got to keep creeping your goals up and up and up. I started the building company as I sold for a builder as a realtor. We did great. We did really good stuff there. And I learned the process, and I want to control my own inventory. So I started the building company. So we started off with one spec house. I sold that. And then it just kind of grew into the pre-solds. We started, pumping out. The first year I built 6 houses, and then we went to 10, and then we went to 20. Now we're at 50.
So do you have kind of a focus of where you're trying to take it?
Yeah, so we're just growth. We're just trying to go up bigger and better. We moved into Helena, Montana. We're looking at some different cities. We're looking at Bozeman, Missoula, maybe. Just it's hard to get that far away, but we just want to keep growing, right? Like, you have to keep growing, or you're dying. You have to keep pushing. So we're just going to keep growing, get through these weird economic times right now. And
have you experienced a market like this before?
08 was kind of like this, not as drastic. The government didn't start the 08 recession, but the banking industry did, so it was more directly correlated to real estate. So I've lived through that, but it just started in real estate, and so I was comfortable
Not selling it.
not selling anything. Right. So I was very comfortable with that. So yeah, so it's just interesting times right now.
Right.
Yeah.
So now you talked a little bit about how you're looking into like building into different cities. Are you looking to get into development?
Yes, we are. We've had a piece of land under contract. That one didn't work out like we talked about earlier. Like every deal works or it doesn't. Like it's the fun part. So we're constantly in looks. I've got another one that we're under contract on. So we're looking to develop, we're looking to build, looking to do commercial. We're in constant growth at all times.
So back to when you first started and we talked about how you didn't have any money
Yep.
to get started. What did you do? Like creative financing, we'll call it. When you didn't have any money for marketing and you didn't have any money for...
So we kind of talked about it, like open houses, like back then an agent would send a voicemail out on the office phone, like, hey, I got an open house. I'll pay the ad. I'd jump on them right away for any open house anywhere in town. Because then if you meet the client, then they're your client. And then, the floor calls I would get for people calling in, I would hustle those. Those are free. People would call in looking at ads. I'd call them back. Coffees with your friends, your family. There's cold leads, there's hot leads. You just have to it's just so much different now. It used to be you get a Yellow Pages ad for an amazing amount of money, but people thought you had to do it. I actually never did it, but
you know what else made me laugh about back then is I do remember this. People would be like, a better property manager, right? You wanted to be the first one. Yeah.
Because that's what shows up in the phone book.
Right.
Yeah.
So this one is interesting. My next
Right.
question for you. Do you wish you had done something differently at the beginning of your career? If you could go back and change something, what would you change?
The only thing that I can even think of is I would take myself more seriously. Like I'd lose that 20-year-old partying, thinking that you had to go out drinking because, then you start making that 100,000 and then you think that you're top of the echelon, like you're the king of the dipshits, right? Like I wish I would have taken it way more serious than I did, because I did strike it. I did do well early.
It's impossible to tell a kid in their 20s that though.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, especially like grew up in a trailer house and you're making 150 grand a year and
you're making more than your dad.
Right. Yeah. Everybody's telling you how amazing you are, right? Mm-hmm. Like don't listen to the dipshits because you're doing better than them. That doesn't suit the way you need to be. So that's about the only, all the trials, all the things that ups and downs, all the lessons are great. I mean, again, that's my school. So I wouldn't do any of those different. All the people that I've worked with, all of that have been amazing. It's just that I wish if I had taken myself more serious, then I think I'd be way farther ahead than I was.
That's a good answer.
Yeah.
So with the markets being cyclical, what do you do to adapt?
I think you just have to get back to the basics. You have to get back to what got you there in the first place. And that's the dirty work that nobody likes to do. That's the going out to coffee shops, meeting with people, I'm back doing a ton of open houses. I got 3 years left. I don't want to be 50 years old doing open houses.
Fuck off. Let's be honest.
Right.
I will talk a bunch of shit to you if you don't.
Do you know what Mark told me when I first got into real estate? You show up, you make calls, you take calls, you dress up. You go out and you meet new clients. There's always reasons for someone to have to buy a house. There's starting a new family, there's divorces, there's upgrading, all of that stuff that we have to, that people have to buy houses or sell houses. So and this is where we do the best because we like that grimy work, that grimy, return the phone calls, do the follow-up, do the open houses, do the mailings, all of this stuff. An old wrestling coach of mine used to say, if you do the little things right, you'll do the big things right. So it's kind of a refresher to get back to doing those little things.
It still makes me laugh that you're quoting a wrestling coach. How old were you when he taught you that?
Probably 6th grade.
Oh my God.
Yeah. But then he coached my son, and so we get to hear it again. So
Yeah, it stuck with you.
it works if you do the little things right. You get it. You take care of yourself, right? You're not sitting at home drinking, because you're sad because you don't have any business, or eating. You're doing your exercises, your disciplines, that kind of stuff. You'll get through it. And the gold rush is at the end of this recession. If you can make it through, if you can push through and do the best you can, then
It
then
really
you're gonna-
is
you're
back
gonna
to
kill it.
basics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
right. And it's kind of fun because it's grimy.
Yeah.
It makes me excited to get up and go to work, which is dumb, right? Like it should be a gray market. You should,
When you're just making a bunch of money.
sales are rolling in, but it's more fun to do it when nobody else can do it. It goes back to the wanting to beat your competition, being competitive.
So how has your perspective on real estate changed over the years? Or do you think it has?
I don't think it has. I've always been super honored to be able to help people with their homes. I had the opportunity to get into commercial real estate when I was young, and that maybe have suited a lot of dudes more. You see a lot of more guys going to that. But being able to help a family into their home where their kids are going to grow up, that kind of stuff, has always been super rewarding to me. And that never lost on me to where I think some of that commercial stuff is just all business. So I don't think it's changed. It's a great vehicle to build a business. It's not recession proof, but it's like technology keeps trying to take it over, right? But then you see the Zillows, losing their stuff, and Redfins and that kind of stuff. Like,
Which I love that.
yeah, it goes back to the basics always come through. in real
And
estate.
you're right. It is such a people-driven industry that you're 100% right. They keep trying to take real estate away,
Right.
and make it
Yeah.
right to where real estate agents aren't needed,
Right.
and whatever. But you 100% are. The funny thing about a real estate deal is, I feel like as a buyer or seller, and me being the agent, there is so much shit happening in the background that you never know about,
Right.
because I just handle it and put the fire out, and you don't have to stress about
Right.
it. To where if you were doing it on your own, you would be like,
Right.
this is awful.
Well, and that's what makes it technology proof, in my opinion, is because there's emotions, there's finances,
There's variables.
right, stuff that you can't put in an algorithm and they're going to spit out what to do, right? AI might be able to get you a cold call lead. You might be able to get a recorded voice, might get you a lead, but it's not going to get you a repeat client, when you're sending their kids birthday cards.
Well, and the Zillow thing lost its ass because they couldn't predict the market changing, right?
Right.
So what they were doing was telling people we'll sell your house in 2 days or whatever.
Right.
And you had to agree to their price, but they were underpricing because the market shot up and they didn't see it coming.
Right.
So they got sued because people lost a shit ton of money doing it.
Right.
And if you're not a human,
Yeah.
right, knowing what's going
Right.
on.
Yep.
Right.
100%.
If you were going to, let's take Jackson, for example.
Right.
Right. Our nephew's just kind of getting into the industry.
Right.
What is the best piece of wisdom or advice you would pass on to him?
You got to want it more than everybody else. You have to get up and get dirty. You got to do the little things, just like we just been talking about. And we talked about it since we've redone this podcast 3 times now, we've talked about it in future podcasts, right? Like, you just have to get up and do the work. You have to want it. You have to want it more than anybody else. And the middle class is the enemy of great. A lot of people grew up too easy, and they expect it to happen, right? They expect it to happen in an 8 to 5.
I'm pretty sure you told him he grew up
I
too
did.
easy.
Oh, I absolutely did. Right. Our dad was a truck driver who worked 80 hours a week. Right. Like, we lived in a mobile home. Right. Like, a lot of the kids, like my kids, are growing up too easy. They're not gonna. Yeah, they're not gonna want it hard enough. So that's that. You. The one thing that we have that a lot of people don't is the competitive streak. That you have to want it more than everybody else. Even though every house needs to sell to keep the market good, like, I want our houses to sell before our competitors. That's just if you're not competitive, I just don't think you'll make it. You're okay. You can make a living. You're not going to get to the heights that you see. And everybody wants to jaw, right? Like, tell you what they're going to do, right? Bad boys move in silence. Go back to Puffy. No one wants to hear about what you're going to do. Just go do it, and then just show them.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
I also think maybe a leg up that we have with each other is we compete with each other on everything.
Right.
We both got IVs the other day. We were racing. We didn't tell each other we were racing, but we both
Right.
kept like looking and straightening our arm.
Who got through
Right.
first?
Yeah.
We have open house competitions, which a
Annie,
lapping is about.
You are
that.
not laughing.
There's going to be a lapping here soon.
No.
I love it. So
So-
fun to watch.
Now I create competition in my head, enemies in my head that aren't there, right? Like, so that's just how I have to do it. That would be my advice. Whether people do it or not, we'll see.
It's also really frustrating when they don't,
Right.
though. But we've had this conversation of like, you can't want it for them more than they want it for
Right.
themselves.
It is fun though. We're 11 years into the home building company, and it started. Everybody talked about how Levi's not going to be able to build houses. He's never framed a house. You hear all the jargon and all that stuff, and then about halfway through, and you're doing 20 houses a year, then you're like kind of get accepted into the, it'll be okay, and then you start beating everybody, like lapping everybody, and then they're not even in the conversation anymore.
Mhm.
Right? Like you just have to like not care what people say and just keep pushing. Right? Because
I like hearing what they say though, because
Right.
it fuels me.
oh, absolutely.
So
Right.
I need that. Like, right? Like keep talking.
Right.
Mhm.
Like when you started the building company, so I'm assuming when you started it, there was like other builders that were like not maybe as many houses as you do now, but
Right.
were like on the.
Oh yeah.
So
Yeah.
How do they react with you? Like, how do they interact with you now?
Now that's fine. Now I'm the authority.
Okay.
Right.
That was
With
my-
the
yeah.
ones still in business, right?
Right.
But so what is actually really cool is I have it happen with real estate agents. Levi has it happen with builders that are retired or close to retirement or whatever. They're actually super supportive. And don't you feel like you get advice? Right?
Yeah. I get a lot of advice from the older ones now.
Yeah.
Like the developers and
Yep.
stuff like that. The builders not so much, right? Like
Yeah.
which I don't care.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's a good community.
Mhm.
Like all in all, right? Like, so now I'm the president of the Home Builder Association,
Mhm.
to where we're just doing more business than everybody else is.
Mhm.
It's kind of fun to be leading the pack.
Yeah. Super cool.
Yeah. And it's even though we're competitors, even like in real estate, in building, in whatever, we're competing, we're still all friends.
Mhm.
Right.
But they just don't know that I'm secretly crushing them. Trying to, right? Like I'm coming for you, but they're
Right.
coming for me too.
Right.
Right? I just feel like it's a known thing, but everybody's still,
Right.
we're still friends.
Yeah, absolutely.
So cool. That's all I
Cool.
had for today.
All right. Well, you can follow me on Levi Warner on Instagram, and we will see you on the next one. Good talk.